In a quaint village nestled among towering mountains and sprawling meadows, there lived a young boy named Thomas. Thomas was known for his bright eyes and contagious laughter, but behind his cheerful facade, he carried the weight of several problems that seemed to overshadow his days. In the modest cottage where Thomas lived with his parents, life was far from easy. His father, Mr. Thompson, worked long hours as a car painter, struggling to make ends meet. Thomas's mother, Mrs. Thompson, worked as a seamstress, but her earnings were meager, barely enough to cover the family's basic needs. Every morning, Thomas woke to the sound of his parents' hushed conversations. They spoke in worried tones about unpaid bills, dwindling food supplies, and the uncertainty of the future. Despite their best efforts to shield him from their troubles, Thomas sensed the tension that hung heavy in the air. One day, as Thomas was walking to school, he noticed a group of older children taunting a boy from his class named Peter. Peter, who wore thick glasses and walked with a slight limp, was an easy target for bullies. Thomas's heart sunk as he watched Peter's shoulders slump in defeat. Determined to help, Thomas approached the bullies and stood up for Peter. He told them to leave him alone and offered to walk to school with Peter every day, grateful for the support. Peter smiled through his tears and accepted Thomas's offer. As they walked together, Peter shared his own problems with Thomas. He explained how he struggled in school because he couldn't see the blackboard clearly, and how the other kids made fun of him for it. Thomas listened with empathy, realizing that everyone had their own battles to fight. At school, Thomas faced his own challenges. He was a diligent student, but he found it difficult to concentrate in class when his mind was filled with worries about his family's financial situation. Math, in particular, was a source of frustration for him. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't seem to grasp the concepts. One afternoon, Thomas stayed behind after school to ask his teacher, Miss Adams, for help with his math homework. He confessed his struggles and his fear of falling behind. Miss Adams smiled warmly and assured him that it was okay to ask for help. Together they went through the problems step by step until Thomas understood them. Encouraged by Miss Adams' support, Thomas began to stay after school regularly for extra help. With her guidance and his own determination, he started to improve in math and gain confidence in himself. Despite his efforts to focus on his studies, Thomas couldn't shake the worry that weighed heavily on his heart. His family's financial troubles seemed to be getting worse, and he could see the toll it was taking on his parents. They worked tirelessly, but it never seemed to be enough. One evening, Thomas overheard his parents arguing in hushed tones. They spoke of mounting debts, overdue rent, and the looming threat of eviction. Tears welled up in Thomas's eyes as he realized the extent of their struggles. He felt helpless, unable to provide the solution they so desperately needed. But Thomas refused to give up hope. He remembered his grandfather's wise words, "In every problem, there is a solution waiting to be found." Determined to make a difference, Thomas brainstormed ways to help his family. He took on odd jobs around the village, mowing lawns, washing dishes, and running errands for neighbors. Every penny he earned went towards helping his parents, but it never seemed to be enough. One day, as Thomas was walking home from school, he stumbled upon a flyer advertising a local talent show. The grand prize was a substantial sum of money, enough to pay off his family's debts and secure their future. Excited by the possibility, Thomas rushed home to share the news with his parents. At first, they were hesitant. They worried that Thomas would be disappointed if he didn't win, and they couldn't bear to see him face another setback. But Thomas was determined. He reassured them that he had a plan and that he wouldn't give up without a fight. With his parents' reluctant blessing, Thomas threw himself into preparing for the talent show. He practiced his guitar every spare moment he had, honing his skills and perfecting his performance. Despite his nerves, he knew that this was his chance to make a difference for his family. The night of the talent show arrived and the village hall buzzed with excitement. Thomas took a deep breath and stepped onto the stage, his heart pounding in his chest. As he strummed the first chords of his song, he poured his heart and soul into the music, channeling all of his hopes and fears into his performance. The audience fell silent as Thomas's voice filled the room. raw with emotion and filled with determination. When he finished his song, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. The applause was thunderous as Thomas took a bow, his cheeks flushed with pride. In the end, Thomas didn't win the grand prize, but he did win something far more valuable: the admiration and support of his community. Moved by his courage and resilience, the villagers came together to raise money for Thomas's family, ensuring that they would have a roof over their heads and food on the table. Overwhelmed with gratitude, Thomas hugged his parents tightly, tears of joy streaming down his face. In that moment, he realized that no problem was too big to overcome when faced with love, determination, and the support of those who cared. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, Thomas's family faced new challenges, but they faced them together, with a newfound sense of strength and unity. And as for Thomas, he knew that no matter what obstacles life threw his way, he would always find a way to rise above them, with a song in his heart and a smile on his face.